welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be exploring the world of Sigma males.
Okay.
And specifically, why they might just vanish from your life.
Interesting.
Our source material today is a YouTube video called Why Sigma Male Suddenly Cut You Off? The harsh truth. Now, I know Sigma male might sound a bit out there.
Yeah.
But stick with us. This video actually offers some really interesting insights into why anyone might choose to distance themselves from a relationship.
Okay, cool.
So I'm really curious to hear your initial thoughts on this video.
Yeah, sure.
What jumped out at you? Why would someone, Sigma or not, make this kind of clean break from a relationship?
Well, I think what's fascinating is how the video portrays Sigma males as like incredibly perceptive.
Okay.
They prioritize authenticity, mental clarity, personal growth. They have this strong internal compass.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to walk away from situations that don't align with their values.
Like they can see right through facades. Do you think that's unique to a Sigma? Or could it just be a sign of someone who's generally self-aware?
That's a great question. Think about a time when you sensed someone wasn't being genuine.
Yeah.
It can be unsettling, right? It makes you question the whole interaction.
For sure.
And this video is suggesting that Sigma males are particularly attuned to those subtle cues, those inconsistencies between someone's words and their actions.
It's like that feeling when you know someone's telling you what they think you want to hear.
Right.
Not what they actually believe.
Exactly. And the video suggests that for a Sigma male, that kind of inauthenticity is a deal breaker.
Yeah.
They value genuine connection and honest interaction.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The video also stresses the importance of respect.
Mm-hmm.
Disrespect a Sigma, and you're toast.
Right.
But on a serious note, how can we all be more mindful of respecting others' boundaries and values?
It starts with awareness, I think.
Okay.
Awareness of how our words and actions might impact others. Are we truly listening, or are we dismissing their ideas, interrupting, talking over them?
Right.
Those subtle actions can speak volumes about the level of respect we have for someone.
Yeah, I've definitely been guilty of that sometimes.
No, we all have.
It's so easy to fall into those patterns without even realizing it.
For sure. But the key is to actively try to understand and appreciate the other person's perspective.
Yeah.
Even if we don't agree with it. It's about valuing their experiences and opinions.
Okay, this next part is interesting.
Yeah.
The video talks a lot about Sigma males protecting their mental energy.
Okay.
And prioritizing peace of mind.
Right.
They even use terms like energy vampires, which, ouch.
Yeah.
But beyond labels, how can we tell if we're draining someone's energy or vice versa?
I think it's important to remember that it's not about being emotionless or avoiding all negativity.
Yeah.
It's about healthy boundaries.
Okay.
Recognizing when we need space and respecting others' need for space as well.
So it's less about avoiding all negativity and more about being self-aware and setting those boundaries.
Exactly.
Like sometimes we might need to say, hey, I need a little time to myself right now.
Exactly. And on the flip side, being honest with ourselves about whether someone is consistently bringing us down or making us feel drained.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting that everyone has different thresholds for this kind of thing.
That's true.
What might feel draining to one person could be totally fine for another.
Yeah.
It's about knowing ourselves and communicating our needs clearly.
This next point really resonated with me.
Okay.
The video highlights how personal growth is a major driving force for Sigma males. They might even distance themselves if they feel someone is lagging behind in their own growth.
Interesting.
Which made me wonder, is it always bad to outpace someone? What if it motivates them to step up their game?
It's a great question, and it gets to the heart of compatibility.
Okay.
It's not necessarily about one person being better than the other. It's about whether you're both moving in a direction that feels fulfilling.
Yeah.
And whether you're supportive of each other's growth, even if it looks different.
So it's less about competition and more about mutual support and encouragement.
Precisely.
Even if you're on slightly different paths.
Exactly. And sometimes recognizing when two people are simply on different paths can be a difficult but necessary realization.
That's true.
There's nothing wrong with evolving in different directions.
Yeah.
But it's important to be honest about those shifts.
The last major takeaway I jotted down was this idea of living a script versus writing your own story.
Okay.
The video suggests that the Sigma male is all about creating his own path,
Yeah.
not following one laid out by society. Have you ever felt that pressure to conform, to follow a script that doesn't feel authentic to you?
Absolutely. And that's where self-awareness and intentionality come in. It's about asking yourself some tough questions like, what are your values? What truly matters to you?
Yeah.
Are you pursuing those things? Or are you letting fear hold you back?
Wow.
Are you living your story?
This really hit home for me.
Yeah.
I've definitely had moments where I felt like I was going through the motions, not truly living in alignment with my values.
Yeah.
It's a constant process of checking in with yourself.
Right.
And making sure you're on the right track.
Absolutely.
What about you? Do you have any tips for staying true to yourself, for writing your own story?
For me, it's about regularly reassessing my priorities and making sure my actions align with my values.
Okay.
It's also about being open to new experiences, challenging my own assumptions, and surrounding myself with people who inspire me to grow.
That's fantastic advice.
Yeah.
I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive, but stick with us because in the next part, we're going to delve even deeper into these ideas and explore how they can help you navigate relationships of all kinds more effectively.
You know, as we're talking about authenticity and creating your own path, it reminded me of how the video frames the Sigma male as someone who's comfortable with solitude.
Oh, yeah.
They're not afraid to spend time alone.
Okay.
In fact, they seem to crave it.
Interesting.
It's almost like they recharge by disconnecting from the noise of the world.
That's interesting you say that.
Yeah.
The video uses this lone wolf metaphor,
Right.
which I admit sounds a bit cliche,
Yeah.
but I get the point.
Yeah.
They're not desperately seeking validation from others.
Right.
They seem to find that validation from within.
Exactly. And I think that ties back into the idea of mental clarity we discussed earlier. If you're constantly surrounded by noise and chaos, it's hard to hear your own thoughts, to figure out what you truly want and need.
Right.
Solitude becomes a way to create that mental space to reconnect with yourself.
So it's not necessarily about physical isolation,
Right.
but more about carving out that mental and emotional space to just be, I think a lot of people can relate to that, even if they don't identify with the whole Sigma label.
Yeah, for sure.
We all need time to decompress and recharge in our own ways. What are some of your favorite ways to create that solitude, to find that inner peace?
For me, it's often about spending time in nature,
Okay.
whether it's a hike in the woods or simply sitting in my backyard.
Yeah.
Being surrounded by nature has this incredible calming effect.
Right.
It helps me clear my head and reconnect with what truly matters.
I love that. Nature definitely has that restorative power. For me, it's often about getting lost in a good book or listening to music that moves me.
Oh, nice.
It's about finding those activities that help me shut out the noise and reconnect with my inner world.
Those are great examples.
Thanks.
It's about finding those activities that nourish our souls and allow us to tap into our creativity and inner peace.
Absolutely. And speaking of creating space, the video also touches on the idea of cutting ties with people who are constantly bringing drama or negativity into your life. Those energy vampires.
Right.
While that label might sound a bit harsh,
Yeah.
I think the underlying message is important. We all have a choice in who we allow into our lives.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, for our own mental and emotional health, we need to distance ourselves from people who are consistently draining our energy.
Right. Have you ever had that experience where you walk away from an interaction with someone feeling completely drained?
Oh, yeah.
Like they've sucked the life out of you.
For sure.
It's not about being judgmental or cutting people off for minor slip-ups.
Okay.
It's about recognizing patterns of behavior that are consistently harmful to our well-being.
It's like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Right.
If those 5 people are constantly complaining, gossiping, or creating drama,
Yeah.
it's bound to have an impact on your own mindset.
Absolutely.
So it's not about being heartless.
Right.
It's about protecting your own energy and peace of mind.
Exactly. And it's about having the courage to set boundaries and make choices that support our own well-being, even if those choices are difficult.
You know, something that stood out to me was the video's claim that Sigma males often have a very clear vision for their lives.
Okay.
They know what they want.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to go after it.
Right.
They're not just drifting along. They're actively shaping their destiny.
And that ties back to those themes of personal growth and intentionality that we were discussing earlier. If you have a clear sense of purpose, a vision for your life,
Yeah.
you're more likely to make choices that align with that vision.
Right.
Choices that support your goals and values.
And you're also more likely to recognize when something or someone is no longer serving you on that journey.
Precisely, it's about making conscious choices that support your growth and well-being, not out of a sense of ruthlessness,
Okay.
but from a place of self-awareness and self-respect.
The video uses this trimming the fat metaphor.
Okay.
Sounds a bit harsh.
Yeah.
But I get the analogy. Yep. Sometimes we need to let go of what's no longer serving us so we can create space for new opportunities and relationships that are more aligned with our evolving selves.
I think that's a powerful image.
Yeah.
It's about making room for what truly nourishes us, what allows us to grow and thrive.
Speaking of growth, the video suggests that Sigma males aren't afraid to outpace others.
Okay.
Even if it means leaving people behind.
Right.
This can be a tricky concept.
Yeah.
Because on the surface, it sounds a bit selfish and uncaring.
It's definitely a nuanced concept, and it's easy to misinterpret it as being about one-upping others or leaving them in the dust.
Right.
But I think there's a more compassionate way to look at it.
Okay, how so?
Imagine you're on a hike with a group of friends.
Okay.
Everyone is moving at their own pace, which is great.
Yeah.
But what if one person decides to sprint ahead, leaving everyone else behind?
That would be pretty inconsiderate.
Yeah.
I definitely feel left behind.
Exactly. Yeah. But what if instead of sprinting ahead, that person simply continued hiking at their own steady pace, knowing that they might eventually outdistance the others?
That feels less like a betrayal and more like just accepting that everyone has different speeds.
Right.
It's about respecting that everyone is on their own journey and that sometimes those journeys diverge.
Exactly. And while it's natural to feel a sense of loss when someone moves out of our orbit, it's important to remember that relationships are fluid.
Okay.
People come into our lives for a season, a reason, or a lifetime.
That's true.
And sometimes those seasons naturally come to an end.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing if someone naturally moves out of your orbit as they evolve and grow.
Right.
Sometimes it's just a natural progression of life, a recognition that we're on different paths.
Precisely. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's about honoring the natural ebb and flow of relationships and recognizing that endings can be just as meaningful as beginnings.
This next point I found really interesting. The video argues that Sigma males have a strong aversion to manipulation or hidden agendas.
Okay.
They want to interact with people who are genuine and upfront, not playing games or trying to manipulate them.
I think this speaks to their value of authenticity and straightforwardness, something we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
They crave genuine connection, honest interaction.
Right.
They want to surround themselves with people who are real, who show up authentically, not those who are constantly trying to manipulate or control the situation.
So they're quick to cut ties with anyone who they perceive as being dishonest or manipulative.
It seems so, yes.
They have a low tolerance for those kinds of behaviors.
The video suggests that they prioritize clarity and honesty in their relationships.
Okay.
They're not interested in deciphering hidden meanings or playing mind games.
Right.
They value transparency and direct communication.
And it makes sense when you think about it. If you're constantly having to second-guess someone's motives or decipher their hidden meanings, it creates a lot of mental and emotional clutter.
Absolutely.
It's exhausting.
For sure.
And for someone who values clarity and peace of mind, that kind of chaos is simply not sustainable.
Exactly. It goes back to that idea of protecting your mental energy and prioritizing peace of mind. Surrounding yourself with people who are straightforward and honest creates a sense of safety and trust, allowing you to focus on what truly matters.
The video also claims that Sigma males are highly independent.
Okay.
And resistant to being controlled or boxed in. They want to live life on their own terms.
Right.
Not according to someone else's rules or expectations.
And I think this resonates with a lot of people, even if they don't identify with the Sigma male label.
Yeah.
No one likes to feel trapped or controlled.
Right.
We all have a need for autonomy and self-expression. And when that need is threatened, it's natural to push back or withdraw.
So any attempt to control or manipulate a Sigma male is likely to backfire.
It seems so, yes.
They're not going to play that game.
The video suggests that they have a strong rebellious streak and a deep-seated need for freedom and autonomy.
Yeah.
They're not going to conform just to please others or fit in with the crowd.
Right.
They're comfortable being different, being independent.
Which I think is a really admirable quality. It's about having the courage to be yourself, even if it means standing out from the crowd.
Right.
And, you know, it's interesting how this all ties back to the idea of living authentically, writing your own story.
Absolutely. It's about defying those societal expectations.
Yeah.
And choosing to live a life that feels true to yourself.
Right.
Even if it means forging your own path.
And that can be incredibly empowering.
It absolutely can.
Yeah.
It's about reclaiming your power and choosing to live a life that reflects your values and your vision, not someone else's.
One last point I wanted to touch on before we move on.
Okay.
The video talks about how Sigma males prioritize their own peace of mind above all else. They recognize that their own inner peace is essential for their happiness and fulfillment.
And I think that's a valuable lesson for all of us.
Yeah.
It's about understanding that our well-being is ultimately our own responsibility.
Right.
We can't rely on others to create our happiness or inner peace.
That's true.
It's an inside job.
So they're not going to stay in relationships or situations that are consistently causing them stress or unhappiness.
Exactly.
They're willing to make tough choices to protect that inner peace.
They have a clear sense of what they need to thrive.
Okay.
And they're not afraid to walk away from anything or anyone that disrupts that inner peace.
It's like they have this internal barometer for measuring their well-being.
Yeah.
And they're constantly adjusting their course to stay in a positive zone.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks.
They're attuned to their own inner signals, and they trust their instincts when it comes to protecting their own peace of mind.
This is all pretty fascinating stuff. We've covered a lot of ground exploring this concept of the Sigma male. But let's take a moment to reflect.
Okay.
What resonates with you the most so far?
For me, it's that overarching emphasis on self-awareness.
Okay.
On knowing yourself, your values, your boundaries.
Yeah.
It's about living intentionally.
Right.
Making choices that align with those values and protecting your mental and emotional well-being.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's about having the courage to be yourself,
Yeah.
to live authentically, and to prioritize your own growth and happiness.
And it's about recognizing that relationships are fluid.
Yeah.
That people come and go in our lives.
Right.
And that's okay.
That's true.
It's about honoring those connections while also being willing to let go when the time is right.
Absolutely. And I think this leads perfectly into our next segment where we'll unpack what this all means for you, for our listeners.
Yeah.
How can we take these insights and apply them to our own lives to create more fulfilling and authentic relationships? Stay tuned as we delve deeper into this in part 3 of our deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive. In the last 2 parts, we explored this whole concept of the Sigma male and their approach to relationships. But now let's get practical.
Okay.
How can we actually use these insights in our own lives?
Yeah.
To build better relationships with everyone.
Well, I think it's important to remember that while the term Sigma male might sound a bit niche, the principles we've been discussing are really universal.
That's a good point.
It's about human connection. It's about personal growth. And it's about creating a life that feels true to your values.
Exactly. It's not about fitting ourselves into some predefined box or label.
Right.
It's about taking these nuggets of wisdom and applying them in a way that feels authentic to us.
Exactly.
So let's recap some of the key takeaways from this deep dive. What do you think is the most important thing for people to remember?
I think it all comes back to self-awareness.
Okay, this video really emphasizes the importance of understanding ourselves.
Yeah.
Understanding our values, our needs, our boundaries, and being honest with ourselves about what we're bringing to our relationships.
Right.
It's about looking inward before we can really focus outward.
It's so easy to get caught up in the dynamics of a relationship.
Right.
Without taking that time to really understand ourselves first.
Absolutely. And self-awareness also includes, recognizing our own patterns of behavior.
Okay.
Are we consistently draining others' energy? Are we respecting their boundaries?
Right.
Are we showing up authentically?
Yeah. Are we the energy vampire?
Exactly. These are all important questions to ask ourselves.
This makes me think of those times when I felt resentful in a relationship. And when I really think about it,
Yeah.
I realize it's because I haven't been communicating my needs clearly or setting those boundaries.
It's easy to blame the other person,
Yeah.
but often it comes back to taking ownership of our own experiences
Yeah.
and communicating effectively.
Yeah.
And speaking of ownership, another big takeaway from this video is the importance of intentionality. The video paints the Sigma male as someone who's very intentional about his choices,
Okay.
his relationships, his life path.
Yeah.
He's not just drifting along.
Right.
He's actively shaping his destiny.
Right.
So it's about making conscious choices.
Yeah.
Choices that align with our values rather than just reacting to circumstances.
Right.
Or feeling like we're on autopilot.
Yeah.
It's about taking the reins
Yeah.
and creating a life that feels meaningful and purposeful. Have you had moments like that in your life?
Absolutely. There was a time when I was feeling really stuck in a rut,
Right.
both personally and professionally.
Yeah.
Just going through the motions, but not feeling truly fulfilled.
You had been there.
And that's when I decided to make a change.
Okay.
I started being more deliberate about my choices, prioritizing my well-being and pursuing activities that brought me joy.
Good for you.
It wasn't easy, but it was so worth it.
That's so inspiring. It's a reminder that we always have the power to choose a different path.
Right.
To create a life that feels more authentic and fulfilling.
Exactly.
Which sometimes requires making tough decisions, like walking away from situations that no longer serve us.
That's true.
Which leads us to another big takeaway from this deep dive. Personal growth.
Right.
The video suggests that Sigma males are constantly striving for self-improvement.
Okay.
And they might distance themselves from people who aren't on the same trajectory.
Yeah.
It seems like a delicate balance,
It is a delicate balance.
between pursuing our own growth, but maintaining relationships.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that personal growth looks different for everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not about comparing ourselves to others or trying to fit into some arbitrary standard.
That's true.
It's about honoring our own unique paths and finding ways to evolve and expand in ways that feel authentic and meaningful to us.
That's a really important point. It's not about keeping up with someone else's growth.
Right.
Or trying to force ourselves to change in a way that doesn't feel genuine.
Exactly.
It's about being true to ourselves and pursuing our own individual paths.
And when we're focused on our own authentic growth, it naturally attracts people who are on a similar wavelength.
That makes sense.
People who support and inspire us.
And sometimes it means letting go of relationships that no longer serve our growth.
That's right. Sometimes people grow in different directions, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that change is a natural part of life. And sometimes those changes lead to a natural parting of ways.
Another major theme that emerged from this deep dive was the importance of mental clarity and peace of mind.
Absolutely.
The video portrays Sigma males as fiercely protective of their mental and emotional well-being.
Yeah.
They're quick to cut ties with anything or anyone that disrupts their inner peace.
And this is a valuable lesson for all of us.
Yeah.
Regardless of how we identify, it's about recognizing that our well-being is our own responsibility. It's about making choices that nourish our soul and protect our energy.
It's not about becoming an emotionless robot.
Right.
Or avoiding all negativity.
Exactly.
It's about being mindful of what we're allowing into our lives and making sure it's serving us, not depleting us.
That's right.
And sometimes that means creating boundaries, saying no.
Yeah.
Or stepping away from situations that are draining our energy.
Absolutely. It's about finding that sweet spot between connecting with others and honoring our own need for solitude and self-care.
That's such a good point.
And ultimately, it's about creating a life that feels aligned with our values.
Right.
A life that brings us joy and a sense of inner peace.
That brings us to our final takeaway.
Oh.
Authenticity.
Okay.
The video really hammers home this idea of living a life that feels true to yourself.
Yeah.
Not just following some pre-scripted path or trying to please others. It's about having the courage to be yourself, even if that means standing out from the crowd.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Living in alignment with our values, pursuing our passions, and creating a life that feels authentic and meaningful.
It's about writing our own stories.
Exactly.
So even if the whole Sigma male thing isn't your cup of tea, I think there's a lot of wisdom to be gleaned from these core principles.
Absolutely.
Things like self-awareness, intentionality, personal growth, protecting our peace of mind, and living authentically.
Those are pretty solid life lessons no matter who you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And here's a final thought to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about other people's reasons for leaving a relationship. But what about our reasons for staying?
That's a good question.
Are we holding on to relationships out of fear, obligation, or a genuine desire for connection?
That's something for all of us to reflect on.
That is such a powerful question. Sometimes the most important journeys are the ones we take inward.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Sigma males and what we can all learn from them.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all of you listening out there, until next time, keep diving deep and keep seeking those authentic connections